This is The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Now, here's Frank Morano.
Well, here we are, and nobody that I would rather be with than the one and only nationally syndicated radio talk show host, veteran broadcast journalist, the one and only Dominic Carter. Dominic, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Frank, and I hope you're well. And to your listeners across the country, folks, I hope you're all doing well as well.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. Although, I am someone, as you know, Dominic, especially in my day, I have tended to, indulge in an adult beverage here and there. Probably more so than you have over the years, I would guess. But I have been really turned off by a lot of the headlines that I've seen on the subject of alcohol. I've always been of the impression that moderate drinking, a glass of wine a day, maybe a glass of wine every other day, is not that bad for you. But apparently the new science is indicating that there's essentially no safe amount of alcohol to drink. A headline in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, "Do Americans drink too much? Alcohol is driving a debate in Washington." And you have the dietary guidelines and the nutritional experts and the people that study this stuff saying that now the guidance on alcohol consumption is being considered separately from the dietary guidelines. And it set off a struggle within Washington itself about how to handle the social aspects of drinking. Because you have, obviously, as you know, being a reporter, you have lobbyists, lawmakers, agencies. They're all fighting over alcohol guidelines that are due to be updated next year. Where do you see this going, Dominic?
Well, I can only speak from personal experience, and I know every now and then, Frank, you like to have a drink socially. I don't drink anymore, right? So when I was in college, I was like most college kids, I'll be honest with you, right? And that meant I was a DJ in college. And so I couldn't get too intoxicated because I had to spin the music at the local bar, so on, right? I had to be responsible. But when I wasn't working, the beer kegs and, I was exposed to children from different communities that drink a lot socially. I guess what I'm trying to say is almost what college kid doesn't drink a lot.
Sure.
Socially. So I did that, right? But the older I got, and I don't want this to sound weird, but I don't like anything, Frank, that's going to take me out of my state of mind. And my state of mind, just like yours, is that while we're on the radio for a couple of hours every night, we do a lot of hours. So that requires a lot of setup, a lot of research,
sure.
A lot of
you're working perpetually.
And so on.
Yeah.
You're working all day long on the shows, maybe for a couple of minutes here, there, a couple of minutes here, whatever. And so I just don't drink because I look at anything that's going to take me off of my game as not good. And here's how I define my game. Working in terms of the radio shows and working on anything business related or home related. And so I just see drinking my personal level, but I do. Okay, let me answer your question. I do think Americans drink too much. I do. I have to be honest with you. We drink socially. We drink when we're stressed out. My drinking, if you will, would be food and food that's not good for you. I'm diabetic. I'm not supposed to have fast food, but I'll say to myself, okay, I can't eat French fries because it'll raise my sugar, but I'll get a 10-piece chicken McNugget with a diet drink or whatever because I just don't have time to sit down and get something to eat, right? That still doesn't make it right. But Frank, I haven't had a drink in years. And you know why? Here's the bottom line. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Because when I did drink, I would like it, right? A gin tonic, twist of lime, a screwdriver, right? Vodka, whatever the case may be. And I would have one, and then I want to have another.
Right, I get that.
I want to have another.
I get that.
And then I want to have another. And then I'm doing an Animal House, you know what I mean? Rocking back and forth, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just not for me the older I get. I haven't had a drink in years.
Well, so obviously whatever, decisions people make, they make. But what's interesting now is that the government is playing a role in what the official guidance is. So you had this Health and Human Service panel, including 3 researchers whose studies demonstrated essentially that any amount of alcohol can be harmful. And in part because of their work, the World Health Organization said last year that no amount of alcohol is safe, largely based on evidence that it causes cancer. And now that the government is going to come out with new guidelines next year, are we going to see them labeling alcohol the way they label cigarettes, for instance?
Well, I don't know what the government is. I don't think it's going to go as far as cigarettes, but we'll see, Frank. The bottom line. But with that said, Frank, in our country, and I don't want to open a debate on this, but we're told even still today of how dangerous cell phones are for us, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't really focus on it, but many of us, like me, do stupid things. And we fall asleep with the cell phone right next to us. You know what I mean? And certainly the kids do it. So in many different venues, whether it's alcohol or whether it's cigarettes or whether it's cell phones or almost anything you can name, Frank, there are going to be, if you will, society guidelines and then guidelines that may come from government that scare the heck out of all of us. Well, I don't know where this is going.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because, as I alluded to, so much of the Washington culture involves getting together socially for drinks. But I guess years ago, so much of the Washington culture involved cigarette breaks and that kind of thing. So I wonder if now the after-hours meeting at a bar is going to look 30, 40 years from now the way we look at people in old movies getting together for these cigarette breaks. The one other story I want to run by you. This is from Reuters. Women in this country have just a third of the retirement savings that men do. Apparently, this is a report from Prudential, and they say that men had saved a median $157,000 for retirement, while women had only put aside about $50,000. This is a survey of 905 adults between the ages of 55 and 75. So you would think these are people that are very much on the cusp of needing to tap into some of that retirement money, because that's an age that people start thinking about and looking at retirement. What's your take on this, Dominic? Why do you think women have saved so much less for retirement than men have? And do you think this is a cause for concern?
Of course it is. And when you look at the fact, it's not surprising. It's not surprising at all, Frank, when you look at the fact that times are changing, where women are now head of households, head of family units, right? And in the past, they necessarily were not. Part of it is discrimination, or maybe that's a strong word, but where women have not earned as much as men. It needs to change, and it is changing, but it's not changing fast enough, because at the end of the day, a woman is going to have in retirement, for the most part, the same financial bills and responsibility as a man. So to only have a third set aside as men, obviously that's a financial disaster in retirement. And I'm surprised at the numbers that you're citing, Frank, because those numbers are all very low, male or female, to retire on.
Yeah, well, I mean, who knows? Maybe this, I guess it's an unscientific survey, but I don't see what, I don't see, I got to think there's some truth to the disparity between men and women. If people want to comment on this, I'd love to hear from them on either of these subjects. Either one, the science suggests essentially that no amount of alcohol is safe. So when they come out with guidelines, the government comes out with guidelines about alcohol consumption next year, what should they say? Should they slap on a label that's similar to what cigarettes have and recommend that you stay away from alcohol entirely? Because if they did that, that would be a huge departure from the last 100 years of government guidance on the subject of alcohol, which has really tended towards moderation. Moderate alcohol consumption is okay. Now, if the science and the scientists that are on this HHS panel are saying that no, zero amount of alcohol is okay. And then secondly, what do you make of this study that shows that women save only about a third of the in retirement that men have saved? And is that a cause for concern for you? 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. By the way, a little bit later, huge news day in terms of Julian Assange negotiating this plea deal. We're going to be all over that. I'll take your calls on that. We got a lot of interesting guests on that as well. Dominic, I wonder if there's any sort of gender imbalance when it comes to alcohol consumption. That's not something that I've looked at recently, but these days, at least among young people, my sense is that young women and young men are pretty comparable in terms of holding their own in terms of drinking. What's your take?
I would agree with you, what you just said. The younger generation, it's probably about equal when it comes to drinking with men and women. Folks, your age, my age, I would venture to say that men probably drink alcohol more than women. I don't know the actual numbers, but I'm interested, Frank, in your take on the pay disparity between men and women as it relates to saving for retirement. How do you explain it?
The only thing I could think is that maybe a woman is more likely, especially a woman in the age ranges we're talking about here, 55 to 75, have taken off a couple of years from the workforce to have children and to raise some children. And in that time, they're not contributing to their 401k. They're not paying into Social Security. They're not, in most cases, not contributing to their pension if they have a job that's pension eligible. That's really the only thing that I could think of. Whereas I think a guy in that age range is more likely to keep working the entire time.
Fair enough. Frank, as I think about this and zero in on this, I think that I'm glad that women, that things are changing and that women are breadwinners now and holding it down financially for the families and so on. I think it's also a part of, in years past, retirement pensions, if you will, or retirement funds were not as much a priority for women, I think, because they deferred on that issue to the quote unquote head of the family, right, the male. But again, times are changing, and I think it's a wonderful thing that women, are head of family. Some men are staying home, I just find it all very interesting, but I'm glad we had to chat on alcohol. I haven't had a drink in years. I really look at it, Frank, right? Just like marijuana, right? Just like marijuana. In college, with some kids, I tried marijuana once or twice, and I didn't like the fact that it made me feel out of myself. I felt like I was wasting my time for 3 hours. I'm all about maximizing maximizing what you can get done. And with alcohol, I just feel like, and beer, and that like I'm not. I look at it almost like gambling the same way. I used to like to gamble, to play blackjack, pretty good at it. don't do it anymore because I just feel that I could do other things with that time period. Because you and I, time is so valuable. We just don't have time for anything.
That's everything. I completely agree with you on all three fronts. Well, I've never tried pot, but I never liked the smell. Really, it's not that I'm wearing some sort of a halo. I always found the smell kind of revolting. Dominic, I appreciate you taking the time. Let's do this again tomorrow.
Fantastic. I look forward to it.
800-848-9222. 800-848-9222. Let's say hello to Jake from the Buckeye State of Ohio. Hey there, Jake. Jake, I got you.
My call.
Yeah.
Yep. First of all, thanks for taking my call.
Okay, great. It's great to have you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a few questions a little bit about this alcohol study.
Mm-hmm. And it's not one study, it's multiple.
All right. So I know you were mentioning potentially government getting involved, and I was really questioning, is that really the correct move? Because first of all, you're dealing with, I think, alcohol use is rampant. Everyone does it. And the question is really more of a laissez-faire, hands-off approach maybe the better move than getting more involved, doing, like you mentioned, like cigarettes, putting on labels.
Right. Well, the thing is, the government, in the form of the HHS and the USDA, they're already involved. And their guidance to the public has been that moderate alcohol consumption is okay. But now, given the fact that 3 of the people on the HHS panel are saying that no alcohol is okay, now there's some calls to say that they have to update this guidance. And this is going over like a lead balloon with a lot of politicians. For instance, all the guys that represent Kentucky, the so-called Bourbon Caucus, which is a bipartisan group of lawmakers, they are going crazy over the fact that they may update the guidance to say that alcohol is bad for you. Andy Barr, Republican of Kentucky, who's co-chair of this, he said, we don't want arbitrary decision-making by these agencies that's not rooted in real science. Now, the other groups that are very anti-alcohol, they're saying, wait a minute, this is real science, and the updated guidance should reflect that.
So I guess what I'm thinking right. I know I've heard some interesting things, for example, regarding a little bit of a similar topic, the war on drugs, right? When the government gets very involved in drugs and tries to combat it at the source. I know there are studies on how Portugal, for example, took care of that, where they actually went totally the other approach, which is very hands-off, decriminalized everything. And their numbers, their rates of overdose and of addiction actually increased. I think numbers are crazy, like 45, 50%. And I'm just wondering, as we, the United States, crack down on more and more, is that really the answer?
Well, nobody's talking about making alcohol illegal again or anything like that. Basically, we're just talking about the guidance. Now, based on this information over the last year or so, Canada has already updated their guidance. They had previously said 15 drinks a week for men and 10 drinks a week for women presented a very low health risk. Now, the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse and Addiction advised health officials last year that people should have 2 drinks or fewer a week to lower health risks. The WHO, I know, not necessarily an entity that has a lot of credibility, they said last year no amount of alcohol is safe, largely based on the evidence that it causes cancer. And a lot of folks are wondering if the government does come out with a more stern guidance, essentially a zero tolerance policy when it comes to what people should be drinking. What is that going to do to restaurants, to bars, as I mentioned, the Bourbon Caucus, to American wine manufacturers, to whiskey manufacturers? There are a lot of economic ramifications to alcohol. And honestly, there are a lot of local governments that benefit tremendously from the tax that's on alcohol, and they would probably be hurt if there's a decrease in alcohol consumption. Jake, thank you. 800-848-9222 if you want to comment. 800-848-9222. The alcohol industry supporters have pointed to other research suggesting that people who drink in moderation live as long, or in some cases longer, than non-drinkers, and much longer than people who drink excessively. What the scientists now are saying is that's simply not the case. They're saying if you adjust for all of the other socioeconomic factors, there's no benefit in terms of longevity towards moderate drinking. They say the people that are likely to engage in moderate drinking are also likely to be a little bit better off financially. They're also likely to do things like moderate exercise. They're also likely to do things like not eat to excess or eat junk food to excess. And if you take out all of the other cohorts, then there's no benefit. So this is something that may sound silly. Who cares what the government recommends? But the bottom line is it does have a tremendous ripple effect on the economy, on the culture. 800-848-9222 if you want to comment. Two open lines. Frank is in California. Frank, what do you make of all this?
Listen, if everybody in the world was ultra healthy, we wouldn't need doctors. And wine has been around for thousands of years. All of a sudden, it's a problem. If there was cancer involved in wine, it would have shown up 500 years ago. And, we probably would have extinct half of Europe by drinking wine. But I think these guys are like regular poll takers. You feed them enough money and they'll say anything you want.
Yeah,
Bottom line.
Fair enough, Frank. Christian Abnett, who's with the National Cancer Institute, he said that it's widely accepted that alcohol is a carcinogen, especially for people having 3 or 4 drinks a day. He said less certain is whether cancer risk goes up with that first drink. So in 2020, you had a subcommittee of the federal panel that advises on dietary guidelines, and they urged the government to lower drinking limits, saying both men and women should consume no more than 1 drink a day. I'll be honest, irrespective of what the government does, seeing these studies and this research over the course of the last year, it has really played a role in my reducing my alcohol consumption. It would not be, before I had a child, before I was married, it would not be unusual for me to go to a bar or something every day after work or whenever and have 3 or 4 drinks every single day. Now, I really almost never drink during the week. And that's not necessarily a health calculation. It's really a time calculation, meaning, I'm so busy with work and kind of what Dominic was saying, caring for a 2-year-old and trying to run a household. You really don't necessarily have the time to go out and get drunk at any given time. Not even get drunk, because 2 drinks not going to make you drunk. At least, not for me. But, I will occasionally have a drink or 2 on the weekend. I did that on Friday. My wife and I went out to dinner, and then we went for a drink afterwards. And but seeing this information about the cancer-causing role that alcohol can play, and that really moderation is not necessarily a healthy thing, it really absolutely has caused me to curtail my alcohol consumption. By the way, we're going to talk with former New Jersey Assemblyman Jamel Holley in just a minute. He's one of the few mainstream Democratic politicians and former elected officials that's actually supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president. We're going to ask him why, and we're going to ask him his take on RFK's exclusion from the debate. But first, let me say hello to Johnny in Sullivan County. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Frank. Nice to talk to you again. I heard your topic about the alcohol thing and everything, and I just found out I have afibrillation all over again. After a couple of years back, I had the procedure to get rid of it, and the doctor told me plain and simple. He said, when was your last beer? I said, my last beer? What are you talking about? I said, no, when was your last beer? I said, what time is it? I said, 8 hours ago. And he said, well, that was your last beer, because what happens is the drinking consumption of beer, or any alcohol, but particularly beer, reverses the pattern. So you can't drink the rest of your life. You're going to have to stop it. We're going to see if we can get this thing back the way it was. And I'll tell you, Frank, I feel like absolute garbage. I'm obese because of the beer. And it's horrible for you. And 2 days ago, I quit. That's the first phase of my diet. 5 years ago, I did lose 90 pounds, and I gained it all back.
Oh.
And I don't need the government to tell me this. It's my own personal experience, and I don't trust anything they say anyway. But anyway, if Dominic is there, and you as well should hear this, there's a natural product called berberine HCl. Berberine HCl. It helps naturally regulate your blood sugar. So that's a good supplement to take. But anyway, it's great to talk to you again. You got a great show.
Thanks, Johnny. I appreciate it. Good luck with your health issues and staying away from beer. And I'm nothing for or against berberine, because I've taken berberine from time to time. And I've read some things that are positive about it, but I don't want to endorse any. I don't want you taking any health information based on what a caller says. Do your own research and make your own decisions. Don is in St. Louis, listening on KMOX. Hello there, Don.
How you doing? I'm right here at the home of Anheuser-Busch.
Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri. Absolutely. Give me your take on this. Should they revise the guidelines for the safe amount of alcohol?
They will. I think they should revise it, but I don't think it will affect human behavior. I think we have a society right now. If you go to college campuses, they want to drink something in order to relax, in order to get the stress off what they had to go through in the classrooms. And as we get older, it may lessen, but the younger generation is going to look for some type of out. Some of them go with the marijuana thing, but the most parties are social. We got football coming up, and what do we do during football games and after the football games? We drink. Now, I was never a drinker because I never liked the taste of it, but I can see how socially they can legislate what they want to. But some people are going to buy it, some people aren't going to buy it. But the social aspect, I think, is going to keep the numbers up.
Yeah, so that's an interesting take, Don. You believe that, on the merits, the guidance should be adjusted, but your view is it's such an ingrained part of the culture that it's not going to make any difference in what people consume.
You got it right.
Interesting, Don. Don, thank you. Hey, we'll squeeze in one more call here, and then we'll talk with former Assemblyman Jamel Holley. Willie is in St. Louis. Hello, Willie.
Hey, how's it going tonight?
It's going, Willie. Give me your take on this. Is it time to revise the guidance for alcohol consumption?
Well, it seems like a nanny state-ish thing to do, but they're going to do it anyway. But we still can't even figure out what's considered binging. And, and this is the government that poisoned alcohol in the 1920s to keep us from drinking it.
Yeah. Well, look, I think, I understand what you're saying on the nanny state front, but the bottom line is the government does issue health guidelines and USDA guidelines all the time. So they're not talking about taking them away. They're just talking about revising them. Willie, thank you. Hey, I'm really excited to talk with Assemblyman Jamel Holley. He is a former mayor, a former state assemblyman, and he's one of the few mainstream former elected officials that are registered Democrats that are openly supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president. We're going to find out why, get his take on RFK's exclusion from the debate, and we will, if time permits, get his take on the Julian Assange plea deal, which I think is a pretty big deal. This is The Other Side of Midnight, straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is Greg Kelly for Priority Gold. What does it mean to be America's precious metals dealer? It means that you're in touch with the hearts and minds of those who love this country, value our freedom, and want to protect the future. Priority Gold is that precious metals dealer. They've helped thousands of Americans back their retirement with solid gold and silver. Call Priority Gold at 888-506-6439. Receive free shipping, free storage, a free investment guide, and one of the best purchase experiences in the industry. Call now or go to PriorityGold.com.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. You know, it was interesting when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. made his announcement that he was running for president as an independent. I recognized most of the speakers that were part of kind of the pregame show of that announcement. But there was one whose name rang a bell, but I hadn't thought about in a couple of years, honestly. And that was former Mayor of Roselle, New Jersey, and former New Jersey State Assemblyman Jamel Holley. And he gave a great speech. And just so people know, that, you know, I'm all for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I've endorsed him, and I'm very impressed with him. But I've tried not to make the show an RFK infomercial because I want people who are supporting all the candidates listening to this show, and you don't need me proselytizing to you. But I had followed Assemblyman Hawley's career for a while, and he was always sort of independent, always sort of interesting. But what struck out for me is I don't know of a lot of other Democrats that are within the mainstream of the political sphere that are openly backing, let alone enthusiastically backing, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So I have been following Jamel Holley all over social media, and I'm really impressed on his take on a bunch of different issues, and I thought you might be as well. So I wanted to welcome former New Jersey Assemblyman, former Mayor of Roselle, New Jersey, Jamel Holley, to the program. Jamel, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining me.
Frank, good morning and good evening.
Yeah, at this time of the day, I have no idea which it is. Believe me, I guess it depends what part of the country you're in. Hey, so fill us in. Why would a bright, young, presumably ambitious Democratic Party politician who presumably could run for office again, get elected again, why would you not back the nominee of your party, President Biden? What was? How'd you get started in supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Well, I mean, thank you, Frank, for the invitation. But first and foremost, I mean, Bobby is a Democrat, and his family and himself, he was raised in the Democratic Party just as well as I was. And so what had happened is the party that he knew, the party that he grew up in, you know, turned their back on him. And so they left him with actually no choice, changing of the rules. The same type of theater that you see now with excluding him from the debate, they did the same thing in the Democratic primary early on. And so it was very painful for Bobby to make that decision, to make that transition to independent. It's something that he took some time to think about. But for someone who believes in transparency and good government and is sick and tired of all the things that you see now with the back and forth of this two-party system, he stepped out. And for that, I see courage. And for that, I see someone who I've known for some time now. And that kind of leadership is necessary and needed. And that's why I'm supporting him for his efforts and for standing out in the front of many different issues that people honestly don't want to talk about or tell us the truth about.
So I want to get to some of those issues in a second, but a lot of Democrats are going to be listening to you right now. And even if they agree with a lot of Bobby's message and messaging, they think this election is a binary choice with nothing less than democracy itself on the ballot, and that every Democratic vote that goes to someone other than Joe Joe Biden risks putting President Trump back into the White House, and with that, all of the chaos of the Trump years. Speak to the Democrats in our audience, Jamel. Why is that a flawed way of thinking?
Because, I mean, look how many times we hear that. So many people that we go around the country and talk to, and there's folks that are all in with him. There are some folks who are with Trump. There's some folks with Biden, but there's those folks that say, well, you know, I would love to vote for him, but, you know, I may be or may not, know, if that's the vote I want to waste. But if you hear how many people say that, what I say to them is you times 20, you times 40, you times 60. So many different people, if they get out of that mindset of thinking like that, they have a choice, and everyone has one vote. So you utilize your vote and vote for him, and not think in that mindset that we are, we have to go here or we go there, or if we give them this vote or it goes to that one. It's not a good mindset.
Right. Oh, no, it's the worst. I mean, it's toxic to democracy itself, as far as I'm concerned. I wish all the people that would spend all this effort trying to persuade folks not to vote for the person that they want to vote for would instead work on improving democracy itself with things like ranked choice voting and other things. Now, do you view Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s candidacy as a viable candidacy of someone that can actually win the election? Or do you view this as a mechanism for getting a message out, building a movement, and giving voice to a protest movement on issues that are ignored by the major two candidates?
I believe that Bobby Kennedy can be the president of the United States. And I think that he gets up every day. In fact, I've witnessed him get up every day and go out and talk to the American people with truth and honesty and transparency. Frank, we get that question often. And, I always go back and think about, the time that Bobby called me to spend some time up in Hyannisport. It was myself and some small family members and, Dennis Kucinich. And we sat there for days, and it was just a few of us. And I think back at that day, that week that we spent, and just going over, different things. And to see that living room or those rooms that we were in for a number of days with just a few people in the room, to the masses of millions of people who now have reacted, and both positive and negative, but they reacted to someone who decided to step out in front of the American people and tell them the God honest truth. And that was the message that you heard in Boston when he announced. It was all about, I want to go to the American people and be honest with them, because for so long, the left and the right, and sometimes the middle, just tell you what you want to hear. Bobby wants to tell the people, the American people, the truth. And this is why he has been the most influential political official that has ever been censored in American history.
Both you and he have, and along with a lot of other guests that I've had on the radio, have been accused of being anti-vaccine. And being part of the anti-vaccination movement. And there are folks that actually will blame him for the comeback of diseases like measles and for all sorts of things that come because of vaccine hesitancy that he has put out there over the years in the eyes of his critics. How do you respond to that, Jamel, for people that either call you or him or both of you anti-vaccine, and that you fomented negative health consequences because of your opposition to certain vaccines?
Frank, thank you. Great question. Frank, when you go to the doctor and you're talking to the doctor and you're in the room with the doctor and you going over your medical history and things that are going on. Do you think about Bobby Kennedy when you're talking to your doctor? I mean, because when I go to the doctor, I'm talking to my doctor, physicians, nurses. I don't think about Bobby Kennedy. And, it's part of that culture war. It's part of that sensationalism that has, positively impacted him into a corner where folks have now heard him out and hear him and have thoughts and have questions and have ideas that, or what he's saying, let me go into checking it. Let me go and fact check. And what that has done is put him in a box, and everything that he has said has always been referenced and documented in terms of history, reports, studies. And so when they say anti-vaxxer, I always tell people, I'm just anti-mandate. I don't believe that the government, he does not believe that the government should mandate your medical care, mandate any type of medical procedures that you do not want. You should have a choice.
If people are just tuning in, we're talking with former Roselle, New Jersey Mayor Jamel Holley. He was the youngest ever mayor of that community, also a former state legislator in New Jersey. These days, he is a supporter, very outspoken supporter of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let me ask you about the levels of support that he's getting. He's doing really well among young people. I think among Gen Z, he's actually leading, doing very well among Hispanic voters. In certain states, he's doing really well. In Utah, for instance, he's tied in second with President Biden. The one group that it looks like he's really struggling with are baby boomers. Now, you would think baby boomers, because a lot of them may remember the mystique of Camelot and even his father's presidential campaign. You would think that would almost be a natural constituency for him because, look, he's a baby boomer. Why do you think he's struggling so much with baby boomers, Jamel?
Because we've been shut out of those areas where those baby boomers have access into terms of keeping up with politics and keeping up with day-to-day events. We've been carved out. We've been censored a lot. And the reason why we have the forepart of what you just said is because we've been able to strategically utilize those mechanisms where you have guys like you who are podcasters and, online, influencers who have that type of audience, and by far has been the most growing communication viewership probably in our history. And I think it's getting better each and every day. And so we're penetrating in terms of the baby boomers. It has been very difficult. That's a good highlight that you pointed out. However, this debate was very important for us because those baby boomers watched that type of, TV, cable. And so that would have been very important for us. However, we're going to continue to make strides. What I will tell you, Frank, is from where we started, from what we've been through, and where we are at now, it has been an accomplishment in itself because he was not supposed to be this far. And we're 6 months out, 5 months out. So we're going to continue to grind, as they say, and continue to push the efforts to break this two-party system down, to hear that 1 in 10 Americans candidates Bobby Kennedy.
Jamel, before we run out of time here, two final areas that I want to try and get into with you. There's this big debate on Thursday, President Trump versus President Biden, earliest general election debate there's ever been. And CNN spelled out certain criteria that you needed to meet in order to participate. One is you had to be at 15% or more in 4 national polls. Kennedy apparently didn't qualify for that. He was only in 3. And the other is you had to be certified to be on the ballot in enough states to win. And apparently, according to them, he's not meeting at this point that magic number of 270. What's the matter? What did CNN do wrong? Why are so many people so upset?
Well, the original rules that they came out that tried to box us out, actually, they've changed those rules a lot to fit the two candidates who have been co-conspiring with each other to box him out. And so, yeah, we've made 3 polls. I mean, I don't know why the other poll left us out or was late. I mean, one can only imagine why another poll would delay his numbers. But the 3 polls, we were at 14, 15, 16, 17%. So we met that threshold, just waiting on another poll. And we have submitted. The campaign has submitted and announced at the time 310 electoral college votes. And so what they presume as not being on enough state ballots is that the signatures that we've handed in, which were thousands and thousands or more of what the number was for each one of those states, the Secretary of State said they need several weeks to count them to verify and to certify.
Yeah, they're not.
Numbers.
They don't update.
But they changed the rules,
Right.
and they're outside of the presidential commission that normally does these types of negotiations and putting these rules out. And so they clearly wanted Bobby Kennedy out. However, I just say to people all the time, you can't count the man out. Whether you agree with him, disagree with him or not, he's the nephew of JFK. He's the son of RFK Jr. He's got the same blood in him, and he's going to continue moving forward.
Yeah, in 20 seconds, Jamel, can you give me your reaction to the plea deal of Julian Assange?
I mean, I think it was an amazing day for individuals who believe in transparency, freedom, the right for free speech. When you get into the lines of, arresting a person of influence in journalism, trying to release matters to the public, I mean, it's very a dangerous space to be in for the world.
Jamel Holley, we're going to have to end it there.
Great day.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on the radio with me. I hope we can do this again soon, and hopefully I'll see you on the campaign trail.
Sure. Thanks again, Frank.
Thank you, Jamel Holley. If you want to comment on any portion of our discussion, be my guest, 800-848-9222, 800-848-9222. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
It's so easy to fall in love. It's so easy to fall in love. People tell me love's for fools, so here I go, breaking all of the rules. It seems so easy.
The great Buddy Holly singing that it's so easy to fall in love, which it certainly can be. All right, 800-848-9222. That's 800-848-9222. Today, it is Carmine's, what they call his stepping up ceremony. Now, I guess when you're not even in preschool, when you're in preschool, which is what he is. He's not even in 3K. He's in what comes before pre-3K. He's in, I guess, nursery school. They don't even call it a graduation. They call it a stepping up ceremony. So we're going to go. But you know what's also inconvenient? Now, I don't know that either of us realized this fully until a couple of days ago. He's not having a full school day today. So, I mean, a big part of why we send him to school, it's not only so that he can learn to interact with other children and things like that, but it's so that we don't have to watch him during the day when one of us is working and one of us is sleeping. So essentially, his whole day of daycare is about an hour. It's just the time of the stepping up ceremony. So I'm looking forward to seeing him do his thing in the stepping up ceremony. Although I've said before, I think a lot of these preschool graduations are just absurd because they just, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm not saying I won't go to all of them, but everybody graduates. You're basically just doing nothing. You're just basically standing there. It's not like graduating from junior high school or college or even elementary school, where presumably you've earned your diploma, but that's today. So we have his stepping up ceremony today and a way to try and figure out the other 4 hours. Those of you that are holding, I mean, he knows his alphabet well. He sings that alphabet like crazy. Yesterday, again, he was giving me a hard time for trying to sing with him, but hopefully that's something he gets over sooner rather than later. Those of you that are holding, I will get to you in a bit. If you want to jump on board, you can do so, 800-848-9222. And in the words of the great Bob Barker, help control the pet population. Get your dog or cat spayed or neutered.